Okay, today on Parts Hold, we are celebrating episode number 50. And our favorite way to celebrate is by talking about some of the weird things that have to do with Cliff's travel, his budget, and then when he forgets things, which is also that's probably got us through 30 of the 50 episodes. And then for a topic today, we're going to talk about strategy for pricing, fast moving or high volume parts. And you're going to want to kind of tune into this because Coach Cliff has, I would say, like an inside track into how to be really, really healthy and profitable and sell a bunch of this stuff. And the rest of the market can't figure out exactly what you're going to do. So stay tuned. That and much, much more coming up today on Parts Hold.
We'll be right back.
Can you believe this is ceremonial episode number 50?
Shocking to me. Absolutely shocking that we've got that many episodes under our belt.
That we've done 50 of these things. Doesn't it just kind of feel like yesterday that we're in that room with a huge green screen? Which, by the way, Kosh did an amazing job of creating a virtual parts department.
I think about, to me, when I think about our first kind of launch, it was coming out and being on the old set of SDR. Do you remember the joke that you told that had had me and you dying laughing? And Chris was like, I don't understand. Do you remember what joke was?
What do you call a fish with no eyes?
Fish. A fish with 8 eyes. That's what it is.
I'm so sorry. What do you call a fish with 8 eyes? Fish. And remember how mad he was at me?
And then we did another episode and he came back and he said the joke at the end of it, which made it even funnier because he goes, I still don't get it. Like it was, oh my gosh, classic stuff.
He has so much disdain for that joke. I feel like I told it to him a few months ago and he still wanted to hit me, but he didn't, which I appreciate. But yeah, that is actually, that fish joke is one of my favorite ones I've ever told.
I think we edited out the complete part of us laughing, but I just remember not being able to control it. Some of your jokes, I really don't laugh at all of them, but that one got me like down deep.
Yeah, I don't think I've never met anyone that laughs at all the jokes that I tell. So you'd fall right into the regular category. So I also noticed you kind of flashed it right at the onset. You got a new mug. I've never seen this before, but I think it's hilarious. Wake up, be awesome, repeat. So is there a little story behind that thing?
Oh man, if my wife listened to these things. So I have a thing about drinking hot liquid out of a cardboard cup. It just doesn't taste the same to me. It's kind of like coffee. It doesn't.
Well, you also have to give it a little more context. What kind of coffee do you drink? And I put coffee as in air quotes.
It's a mushroom blend that you drink in the morning. It's supposed to help with cognitive stuff, keep you more alert, keep you wider awake, like all those things. And then I mix in a couple other things, but it doesn't taste good. But I've been super consistent about drinking it for now going on about a year and a half. And it's preferred out of this porcelain cup. So my wife hates when I bring home cups. So I would go buy a cup in town when I got into town, if I'm staying in a hotel like I am this week. And I would go buy a porcelain cup. Well, a lot of times they didn't always make it home, but if they made it home, she would get so mad because it ruins, the aesthetics of the same colored coffee cups on the shelf in the same shapes. So she would get rid of them. So anyway, this one stayed with me and I travel with it now in my suitcase.
You know what's funny is that reminds me because my girl gets really upset at me too. So like the plates in my cabinets, they're two-toned and they have to be organized the right way. Like the color has to go on the right, and like it's a nightmare. And she's gotten to the point where she won't put the dishes away anymore because like I'm not a good person if they're not in order.
Oh, you have to have them in order.
I'm the one that wants them in order. Yeah. can we address the fact that you're like, I'm not going to say the name of the coffee company because they're not paying me, implying that like if you start to mention the name of the coffee company, the mushroom coffee company, like their sales are going to triple, which might be true because right now you're their only customer. So if 2 people heard what you said, they might actually start to drink the coffee. But
We could get syndicated by somebody if Mudwater wanted to sponsor us. Shout out. We would imply it on every episode.
Mudwater is mushroom coffee, and they pull the mushrooms out of cow poop.
That could very well be possible, but it does help me. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It helps me stay focused. It does do that. Now,
yeah, it's probably way healthier than your traditional bean coffee, but you do some weird stuff, man. It's pretty awesome. Well, happy 50th, and then like 50 is half of 100, which brings me to my next point with you is that you have one pod. You have a unipod in your ear.
Yeah, another funny story. We should probably collectively as a company start writing all these things that happen. And we talked about it on our company call the other day about all the funny things that have happened, multitude. But I was in Louisiana and my backpack. So this particular airport, Lafayette, Louisiana, is the only airport that I've ever traveled in that wants you to remove all of your food, any snacks that you have. All the rest of them, you can leave them in the bag. They never ask you for them. But they wanted me to take them out. Well, I didn't take all of them out. I just thought it was kind of weird. So I was a little bit defiant. So this is probably payback. So it got through the security. They wanted to rescan it and pull all my snacks out. Well, my AirPod container was in the back zipper. Well, they dropped my bag. I didn't know that it fell out. I just saw them stick everything back in the bag. And I didn't know that I only had one AirPod until I got on the airplane. And I was devastated, to say the least. But now,
Yeah.
Do you know how long it's been since that's happened?
I'm going to guess 3 weeks, and you haven't replaced it yet.
It's been 3 weeks.
That's what I said.
And I've lost you.
You have lost me. Wow. So that's the last time we will talk about your AirPods on this podcast because they are evil and deadly. And they just basically killed our entire recording.
I think that somebody in the Lafayette Airport TSA sabotaged them.
And they are laughing. They are laughing uncontrollably right now.
Yeah, they're probably watching this thinking that's exactly what they did.
It's a conspiracy, or at the most or least, a sign from God. So
maybe.
All right. Speaking of signs from God, what we want to talk about is pricing strategy or best practices for fast moving parts. And Cliff has some really, really cool beliefs, ideas, and also some successes with this kind of like this area of the inventory, if you will. And I think that it's, I'm going to let you kind of talk, but from me looking in, is that it seems like one of those things that we talk about the world happening to us or for us. When it comes to pricing strategy for a lot of fast moving items, we definitely allow external factors to try to dictate what we're doing. And the truth is it's just as much opportunity for profit and for having a healthy parts department with having a good strategy for these fast moving parts, just as much as it is with your parts matrix or your breadth or your depth or whatever other kind of metrics you're using to determine success. So Cliff, start us off. Talk a little bit about, your philosophy towards fast moving parts.
Yep. So one of the things that's happened recently, as I'm looking at some of the financials that I'm getting from some of the dealers, is it's standing out on the as a line item on there, and you're seeing where that particular line has got a really, really low GP margin. And so probably the first thing that I would want to understand when I'm pricing the fast moving parts in general, and when we're talking about fast moving parts, like you're going to have to use some creativity. Your fast moving may not be the same as someone else's, yada, yada, yada. But in general, I'm looking at brakes, filters, oil filters,
Wipers.
wipers, any kind of general kind of maintenance item in some capacity. But what is happening a lot is you're seeing people price that stuff based on what they think that the market should be, or what their competitors are supposedly pricing, or tribal knowledge, or like there's a bunch of different ways to do that. But probably the first thing that, and I think you and I agree with this, the first thing I want to do is try to figure out from a profitability standpoint where I need those items to be. And I don't know that's looked at that way.
Okay. But you have been, as you've been going in and fixing parts departments, you're taking that part very seriously, right?
That's probably number one on my list. That's well, it's not probably, it is number one on my list. Like that's the first thing that we do is we go through the financial, figure out actual pricing structure, and then build around that need and what we're trying to accomplish. Too often we're calling up everybody else and trying to compare ourselves to someone else instead of really looking at what the need is for it, for our department. And again, from a profitability standpoint.
Okay, yeah. So when you think about like, so you're going into a store and you're trying to optimize things when you're thinking about profitability on those items. Do you have like what is a rule of thumb number? And it's not going to be exact because everybody's a little bit different. But when you think about margin on a fast mover, do you have kind of a number in the back of your head that you're hunting for?
I don't always, because it is more based on the store's need and what we're trying to accomplish from a net to gross standpoint. But I'm generally staying around that 40 to 45% margin. That's what I'm really chasing on most of the times. I have had some stores that have been as high as 50, but I'm seeing way too often now in the 20s.
Yeah, so I think that's the crazy part to me is that if we're looking holistically at fixed ops, it's probably more common that on some of those fast moving parts, you'll be short margin on parts and there's a labor discount.
Yeah.
So you lose on both sides where you're not really healthy as a business as a whole, right? So let's say that you pay a technician 3/10 and you're charging $10 in labor, and then you're at a 20% margin on the part itself. If you're doing that for an air filter, like there's just there's no meat on that bone,
Man,
right?
the crazier one that I've seen, and I don't know if you've seen this, I'm sure you have. It's way, way more common now that you see a discount coupon that is split parts and labor. So we've discounted the labor rate, we've discounted the parts, and then we throw the coupon on back on both of them.
So we discount the discounted operation.
We kill any opportunity to be profitable. And then when they get the financial at the end of the month, they're looking at it going, well, I don't know what happened. Well,
Yeah, because you could never sell enough air filters to justify the discount.
No way.
Right? Because what you're doing is you're racing to the bottom, and it definitely affects the parts department. And the other thing that I always think about is when we're talking specifically about air filters, and what we're not taking into consideration is like we're like, well, we got to be competitive with Napa or AutoZone or whatever it is. I would just encourage you to take a Toyota air filter from the manufacturer and compare it to the Napa or AutoZone filter.
Yes.
And there's just a difference between the two. Not saying that AutoZone and Napa filters don't have their place, because they do. I've used them many a times for used car reconditioning and stuff like that for my off-brand models, and I have no problem with that. But there is a higher intrinsic value to the OEM part that we're trying to just be competitive with the marketplace, and we're not taking that part into consideration. And there's also a thing where if someone says, I need an air filter, and we tell them it's $37, has anyone ever told you it's $33.22 at this other place?
I don't know that I've ever heard that. And I'm sure that somebody's hearing that more often, probably more often now than you're hearing it, because, internet and those sorts of things are more prevalent than, maybe, or used a lot more in that sense. Before you skip over the quality thing, like I would even cut an oil filter in half from, an off-brand versus a manufacturer, and just look at the.
Oh, that's smart. So you have like a little chemistry set kind of thing.
then you have something to say, hey, this ours is a better quality. Like you're visibly showing that.
Yeah, because when you're doing that, you're not talking about price.
I just would get away from the price conversation or try to migrate away from there. We have strategies within our system to do that. The thing about it is I agree with you. We're comparing ourselves to something that we can't compare to. Their whole deal is different than a dealership's environment. And if you listen to this and you work in a Napa or Advance or O'Reilly's or whoever, like even from that standpoint, like the pricing can be different. We can make it what we want. You hit on one at the beginning of it that I was actually shocked about when I came out of a dealership was the price of wiper blades. Because I remember what we were pricing them in the dealership, and I know what I paid for them outside the dealership, and I was shocked. It was higher, much, much higher.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that sense, like we've got to figure it out from a profitability standpoint. Back to your comment of how many air filters would we have to be profitable?
If you're losing $2 per filter, the answer is never.
It's
the more you sell, the more you'll lose.
Yeah. The other thing with pricing that I think about too, when you're building a pricing strategy, it's family pricing.
Yeah. So explain that for those that are not necessarily familiar with that strategy. I know that a lot of people are, but I've got a couple of thoughts on this because I love family pricing. It is my favorite thing in the world when it comes to parts pricing.
One of our DMS systems that are used in the dealerships that will actually allow you to do it and get a strategic pricing structure so that I actually know what my true cost is. So it will do all the math for you. But it's taking a group of parts, let's call them brake pads. And so taking a group of brake pads and basing my cost, my net cost around how many times I'm selling it per year. So for example, if I'm selling one that's $30 cost 30 times a month, but I'm selling one that's cost me $80, I'm selling it one time a month. The average is going to be different because I'm selling that lower cost one way more time,
right,
a whole lot more times in the month. And so it's taking and giving me a cost associated with those items based on how fast they move. And then I can use a markup margin to get out there. Now, some things that people have a hard time with that I've experienced personally and see is that when I have that $80 one and I'm selling it for below cost on that item, there are people that it wrecks their mind that they can't understand how they can be profitable. But if they're selling that other one that's way cheaper, 2, 3 times, 4 times as many in a month, it changes the cost of it.
That's right. So my belief on that theory is, and like you said, it blows someone's mind if you've got a set of brake pads that have a cost that is 3 times what the set of regular brake pads is or whatever, is that you can price all that stuff where brake pads cost X dollars, whatever it is, and you price it high enough to be able to absorb like some of the cost of the one expensive brake pad sale. And what happens is no one can figure out how you do it. And the only times, typically like a brake job, for instance, or brake pads, for instance, get to where like there's a certain level where a customer, like they don't know exactly how much that stuff should cost, but there is a point at which someone will raise an eyebrow. Right now, the thing is that what I love about this is, let's say that your family pricing, your $30, 80 time a month purchase, and then your one time $80 cost brake pad. Now, the traditional way, if let's say you're marking that up and you're doing a 40% margin, so you're going to have a 66.7% markup. You are actually putting yourself in a position, if you traditionally mark it up, where you're selling that $80 brake pad for just kind of doing quick math on this, by the way, $140, roughly. So they're selling it for 140, and then you're selling it for 78 or 84 or something like that. And you seem a lot cheaper on that particular thing. But at the off chance that they make a they make a phone call and try to figure it out. Now you're significantly less on the expensive brake job. And then once you're really significantly less on the expensive brake job, what do you think people assume about the other brake jobs?
Cheaper on all that.
Yeah, but you don't have to be.
No.
You might be $10 higher than someone else on the cheap brake jobs that you have 80 of, but because you're $40 less on this one, it makes you seem really, really fair. And I would contend that that is really, really fair.
Yeah, there's probably somebody out there that's going, well, what about the one-off situations where you have some particular model that has Brembo brake pads on it that are really, really expensive? Those are separate. Let's not, throw the whole thing away because of the one-offs. Like that's the exception, not the rule. What it also allows for me from a director standpoint, it allows me to be able to price that stuff straight across the board, and my advisors don't have to try to figure it out, and the customer doesn't have to wait very long.
So quotes are more accurate and easier to obtain.
Yeah, it's to me, because I think all of this has to revolve around customer service as well and how we treat the customer. And the customer experience is way better when I'm calling in and I'm saying, how much is a set of brakes for my vehicle? And I'm able to, ramble that off, than having to, well, hang on 1 second. Then I've got to call over to the parts department. I've got to get my labor, like all that. If I'm setting that up and family pricing it, and I know we're talking about just parts in this standpoint, but if I'm pricing it across the board like that, it allows the service advisor, they don't have to think. It allows my counter people to be the same way. I'm a big fan of family pricing. I think it gives you an opportunity to get a really, really strong margin. And like you're stating there, like you kind of become the saboteur of the market.
Yeah, with a 41 or 42% overall margin on a brake pad.
Yeah.
And you're still messing up the market. I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite thing that you're doing. And I bet I've seen you do that a dozen times with our clients. And every time they're kind of blown away by what the end results are.
Yeah. And those are my two sticking points, like having a profit-driven pricing strategy and then family pricing. Those are the snipers of being able to have a good pricing strategy.
Where do you find, like, in terms of what people are calling around for? I think that's another thing that kind of I think about with parts and competitive pricing. It's pretty rare, I would suggest, that people are calling around on air filters and wipers anyways.
If you've got somebody, I was just doing this the other day with a dealer, and we were calling around, and they were asking them a question. It was a service question, related question. And the way that they did the pricing thing, like, from a dealer standpoint, when you got those calls, that it was the guy down the street pricing that. Like, if somebody's calling price shopping particular items, I would say 9 times out of 10, that's another dealer or competitor shopping it. Like, customers are rarely, calling in to shop some of those things. They're coming in and purchasing those things. Again, and if you're providing a really, really solid customer experience and really have a customer-centric business, price is less of an issue anyway. They're coming in to buy it from you because they want to talk to you.
Yeah, price is only an issue where we failed somewhere else in the process.
Yeah, that's great.
Good.
I love that.
So yeah, so the big key is, if you got those fast-moving items, strategically family pricing is our key to success and profitability. And just understand that you don't have to be the cheapest on every single thing. And the family thing will kind of set you apart in the marketplace and in the way that you want to. So that way, when competitive pricing becomes a conversation, you're at the forefront of it. And at the end of the day, there's so many other factors other than price why people buy parts from a certain place.
Yeah, I could. There's 1,000 different reasons. And there's 1,000 different things you talk about pricing structure and strategies, but I think those are the main ones.
Yeah. So we'll kind of close with this too, and you just chime in, but I do believe that this is a great opportunity. And I'm not just talking about fast moving parts, but maybe I'm talking about preventative maintenance, right? So we might have a fluid conversation in here, but the thing that I always think about with these items, all of it should be a collaboration with service and parts together.
Agreed.
And if we do this thing right, both sides should win. And I think about this, like probably the thing that comes to mind most, what I see when there's like a discrepancy, I'll give both examples, right? So one would be like an oil change where it's a $79.95 oil change and there's $70 in parts. And they're at a like 37% margin, and then they're selling a 3/10 of labor for $7 or $8 or something like that. That doesn't make any sense to me. Much like the brake fluid service that's going out at $150, and there's $140 in labor, and we've only we're at $10 in cost on the parts when we could very easily move those numbers kind of around. Think of that as a collaboration and opportunity, and the only reasonable outcome on that stuff, those fast moving preventive maintenance items, is a win-win.
Yeah, I can't. There's no way to say that any better. I think that's perfect.
Cool. Well, every once in a while I say something.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's good. So, so no list today, just kind of like a real good discussion on those fast moving parts. Congratulations, Coach Cliff, on episode number 50. This has been a really, really fun kind of journey with you. And I look forward to seeing everybody next time on Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.